Paul. Hi.
Simon.
Hi. Do you know why I joined a bit earlier before the countdown ran out? It's because I saw, and you're going to love this, because we've got one viewer already. Even before the countdown ran out, I thought, well, can't keep that viewer waiting. The most important viewer right now. That viewer is you are the most. If you're watching this
directly,
yes, we love you. Thank you so much. Indeed, Paul. How you doing,
If we had two, that would then be a queue, which would be the proper way that England's line up.
Yes, it would. You know, I accidentally found myself in a queue the other day, and I thought, how British is that? Yeah, it was at school fete for my kids. I was just standing around, and I accidentally found myself in a queue for a stall. Well, I was only standing here sort of looking at things, and then people were queuing behind me. Just accidentally.
That must be the start then. I'll form a queue.
That is the most British thing I've done in quite a long time. But anyway, welcome to Through the Looking Glass.
TTLG in your face.
TTLG in your face. It's a good one this week. They're all good ones. I say that every week, but this week is a really good one, I think, because Paul makes me do this quite a lot. He makes me read things. He makes me do homework. It's really frustrating. And I've had to do lots of homework this week because, Paul, you found something this week. You found something interesting. Something that's piqued your interest. What is it?
I did.
What you found?
And this is on X. And this person or this group has got a blue tick next to them. So should be 100% factual.
I've got a blue tick. It doesn't mean I'm 100% factual, does it?
You're 100%.
Blue tick wankers, I think we're called.
This is from @AfricanHub, and again, I don't know if it's true or not, but what it did is made me think. And as I get older get into my later years, I start to think more and critique more. When I was a youngster, I took everything as gospel. What the news said was right. What my parents said was right. You know, you fall in line to the way things should be. You don't want to stand out from the crowd, but. And I kind of knew about Libya and I knew about Gaddafi, but didn't really care about it at the time. I wasn't getting invaded. My house wasn't blowing up, so you just read it and listened to it. But this African Hub have said, and this is around the leaked Hillary Clinton emails, which again, this is an old thing. So back in 2011 to 2015, I can kind of see these emails were from. Painting, well, the African Hub article says that Gaddafi wasn't that bad. And that made me think. It made me think, or maybe they're not. I wonder if, because the news is a powerful beast in itself and is controlled by other people behind hidden doors.
So tell me who is Gaddafi? First of all, tell me who is, because there might be people listening to this who have gone, I don't know who you're talking about. Who is Gaddafi?
Gaddafi is, as we call him, a dictator. He took over power from the then king, and I can't remember his name, in a coup d'etat, which is lovely to be able to say that on live stream. Coup d'etat, but a bloodless one, which usually when you hear stuff like this, everyone gets killed, everyone dies. This one was a bloodless one, and I guess he just used some strong words and told him if the king doesn't get out, then he will, I don't know. And he legged it. And this was a king that was backed by the Western powers. So it was purposely put in.
So this is 1969, right? The coup d'etat. So he's quite young, I think, Gaddafi at this point. And he's overthrown. He's overthrown the powers in Libya at that moment to become leader of Libya in 1969. Right. And then he's just the leader of Libya all the way through 70s and 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
All the way through.
They just accepted it.
Yeah, all the way through. Right, and your question then is, was he that bad? Was he such a bad guy? Or is there another side to Gaddafi that we don't know about?
Exactly. So I'll quickly go through the things that the article says. So it says, so he tried to improve the internal political situation in France. That's the negatives. Jesus Christ. This is the right article.
How is that a negative?
Hold on. I may be reading the wrong stuff. How poor of me. But basically, he tried to give free housing to everyone. Quite a nice thing. Free education to everyone. So including women and children. So whereas a lot of the powers back then just focused on the men and it's male dominated, he spread that out. He had he tried to create, and this is me just reading off this and off the internet. He tried to create an African currency based on the Libyan golden dinar. Now, that in itself gives them power, gives them wealth. They're not relying on the Western dollars or the other stuff that's around at the time. He's trying to unite those nations around him as well. So in himself, he's trying to be a leader and creating a freedom for that part of the world, which the Western side, which still does it, feeds from them. We kind of use them, probably in a we try and say it in a nice way, people are getting paid and everything like that. But I think they are far more powerful than we are and are far more rich than we are, yet we're richer, which never makes sense. So I think Gaddafi himself, again, just looking at this, was he bad? No, I didn't live in Libya at that time. Never lived there.
You're not Libyan, you're not.
No, not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
So inside knowledge is good, and you'd love to be able to. And the internet wasn't as prevalent back then, like 1969, wasn't as prevalent as it is now. Social media definitely wasn't. So you wouldn't have had those recordings, those people on their phones.
Didn't exist
exactly.
At all.
They wouldn't have been able to record history. And one of the things, as much as people hate phones and hate social media, it can record history. People record events, unedited, live, as it's going on. So we would have been given a perception, a veil that said this is what things are like, and we would have trusted it because we didn't know the news was a complete load of rubbish. So was he good? Right. Was he bad?
Well, it's a good question, and I did a bit of reading because Paul put this in my head. So I did a bit of reading, and these are some of the things that I found out. Right, so 42 years Gaddafi was in charge of Libya. 42 years. It's insane. It's a long time, right? Now, and I'm looking this way because I'm reading some stuff here, right? So you talked about women. Women in Libya were free to work and dress as they like, which obviously for an Arab nation might be a bit different. Some other Arab nations. Life expectancy was in the 70s, which is really, really high. Per capita income, while not as high as expected because Libya has enormous amounts of oil wealth, was around $12,000, £9,000, according to the World Bank, throughout his reign. Now, it's really interesting that when you look at that, because Libya had probably still does, enormous amounts of oil reserves, right? So loads of natural resources, and only has a population of 6.5 million. I would think that an estimated $12,000 per capita income is really low. Like, where is that wealth going? But, I've also read that literacy rates had dropped. There was free healthcare. There were some good things around what you'd expect from a socialist sort of Arab nation, if you like. Some things that even in the UK we think are the right things to do, right? So there are cases, I think, you could think maybe locally or on a national level, Gaddafi was probably seen differently in their media to what we see him as. And this is interesting, isn't it? Because there's this idea of an enemy, and we'll get to that in a minute. There always needs to be an enemy. We'll get to that in a minute. However, I want to counter some of your stuff, Paul, and what you're reading about. And I don't think for 1 second that you are a Gaddafi apologist or you are a Gaddafi supporter. So anybody who's watching this thinking Paul is a raving Gaddafi supporter, abandon that. He's not. What Paul's saying to us, I think, is that maybe there's more than what meets the eye a lot of the time. Maybe there's more than what we're given in the media, what we're giving in these narratives. And as unthinkable as this might be, maybe we're lied to sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Maybe. However, I want to read a couple of things that I found out, which says maybe Gaddafi isn't, maybe we're right to think that this guy is a bad guy, because I think it was not long after coming to power, which I think it was 1970, he has chucked out all of the Italian community. So he chucked them all out, and I'm trying to find it here exactly what it is. And I think he's basically taken over all of their businesses and their homes and all that sort of thing. A little bit like Idi Amin and the Indians, that sort of thing. But he has
the Italians immigrants then?
Well, I think it's one of those things, and I don't know this for sure, and maybe people watching this can educate me a little bit here, but I think a little bit like Algeria and Morocco, which were sort of colonized by the French. Libya, I think, was Italians, and that sort of empire, those naval empires of the 1800s and that sort of thing. You know, where Britain was very much sort of that Central Africa, Nigeria, and things like that, and Zimbabwe. Whereas I think those northern Arabian African nations were very much colonized by the southern European nations of Spain, Italy, places like that. So I think that's what's going on there. But he's basically expelled, I think it was about 12,000. I'm trying to find it here. It's about 12,000 Italians that he's expelled. And also Jews, some Israeli Jews, because I think Gaddafi was not just sympathetic to Yasser Arafat, but actually quite pally with Yasser Arafat, the Palestinian leader at the time. Not only that, I think at one point he said, I don't think Yasser Arafat is quite militant enough. I think he needs to be a bit more strong.
Which would tie into the things he's backed.
Exactly right. So he funded, didn't he? He actually funded a lot of one position you could call them liberation movements, and I guess there are media narratives outside of the Western world that view these as liberation movements, and students wearing a Che Guevara t-shirt, that sort of thing, power to the people, see them as liberation movements. But there are Western narratives which are, no, these aren't liberation movements, they're just terrorists. One of them. Go on.
Just before you say that, I'll take one that's close to our hearts, or close to our home, I suppose, is the IRA, a prime example. Yes. And on a smaller scale, England and Ireland, separate countries, separated by water, but we seem to have just a little piece of it. Now, that little bit there, Northern Ireland, that's ours. The IRA fought back. They bombed us. They tried to expel us, and they were perceived as the enemy. And when I was young, similar to Libya, I suppose, you thought, well, they're trying to kill us. Yeah, they're the enemy. What are they doing?
100%. When I was a kid, used to see it on the news, like nail bombs in London. There was no good narrative around the IRA. A lot of times I didn't really understand why they were bombing us. Why they were
everything.
Well, they were terrorists, weren't they? That was the point. They were before September 11, before we got this idea of Islamic terrorism in UK. Terrorists to us was the IRA, right? That's who it was, 100%. And he supported the IRA, didn't he?
He did, but then you look at, and this is going way back, look at the suffragettes. They bombed. So they were terrorists. Were they terrorists, though? And then if you look at the Nelson Mandela's party, which haven't got it to hand at the moment,
exactly,
they did similar things. So are they terrorists unless they win?
Well, I think you've got to, first thing, you've got to crack an egg to make an omelette, right? That's the argument. Right? But there's the old saying, right? One person's freedom fighter is another person's terrorist.
Yeah.
Right? 100%. But I've got a little list for you here.
Go for it.
Of some of the things that I almost said Yasser Arafat. Some of the things that Colonel Gaddafi supported. Not only did he support, but directly funded with the oil money from Libya, right? Directly funded, right? I'm going to read some out. First one is the Black Panther Party, the Nation of Islam, the Almighty Black Peace Stone Nation, the Tupameros, the 19th of April movement, the Sandinista National Liberation Front in Nicaragua, and other liberation movements. The fight against apartheid in South Africa that you've said, the Provisional Irish Republican Army, IRA, ETA, ETA, which were the Spanish ones, weren't they? Action Direct, Red Brigades, the Red Army faction in Europe, the Armenian Secret Army, the Japanese Red Army. It goes on and on and on and on, till we get to something quite shocking, which is the Black September organization. Who were the people that committed the 1972 Munich massacre of Israeli athletes in West Germany? So I get it. I get this idea that we're supporting liberation movements, but actually, these people, or some of these people who are associated to these movements that he's funding, they are criminals. They are murderers. They are murdering innocent people in the name of some sort of ideological ideal that they have. So it's a toss-up, isn't it? Are they good people? Are they freedom fighters cracking an egg to make an omelette? Or actually, no, these people are actually just murdering horrible people who are going about change in all the wrong way. Interesting.
But we all murder. I haven't. Yeah. Hold on. Sorry. Yeah, I've killed an ant. Apologies for that. But again, it's depending on what side you're on. Yeah, you say these terrorist organisations, and I think one of the benefits we've got, and we are far from the history of it, and we're quite. I'm an analytical thinker. I can keep myself distant from it because there's nothing that's affecting me personally, and you can look at the facts that are presented, rather than having any sort of passion behind it. I never had anything where a family member was killed in a bombing. I've never had anything like that, so it's easy for me to talk as if it didn't mean anything, but. People have done things throughout time to get their point across, and people have been killed. We call this is going to be horrific, I suppose, the 9/11 attackers. They're murderers. But how many people have America killed? Now,
good question.
The people that did the 9/11 bombings, they aimed for towers and directly went for innocent people. You can say the Americans don't do that, fair enough, but they still kill innocent people, and they just call it, it's just cost of war.
It's true. Well, this gets us onto the underlying theme, I think, really here, which is what piqued my interest when you said, "Oh, read this stuff about Gaddafi. It might not be as much of a knob as we all thought." right. And this is what piqued my interest. And there's this underlying theme of enemy. There always needs to be an enemy, doesn't there? In the Western world, we're always presented with an enemy. When I was a kid, it was the IRA, right? It was the IRA. And then you got to sort of. Well, just before, I was very young, but you had the Falklands with Argentina. So that's why we historically, whenever we play them at football, we're like, we've got to beat the Argies because of the Falklands, right? And we even got it still now with Germany. I've got to beat the Germans, haven't we, because of the war?
Yeah,
so this idea of an external enemy. But then it rolls through. Then you've got the IRA because of all the bombings in the 80s. Then you've got the 90s, right? Saddam Hussein in the first Gulf War. Right. Then
I would say, though, the Germany thing was quite... It was a proper thing.
They brought it on themselves. They brought it on themselves. Yeah.
I wouldn't say that Trump would be standing there going, fake news. No, he definitely didn't do it. Hitler's a nice guy.
No, Hitler might be one of the only legitimate enemies on this list. But then you had...
the French.
What, the French are they enemies or not?
They definitely invaded us.
What, the French? Well, that's... Yeah, I mean...
And Norway. Norway we should really have a problem with.
Well, the Saxons, well, how far do you go back? I don't know. Put a pin in this, because I saw a tweet the other day by somebody. Just say, remember the pin to me in a minute, and I'll read it, because it was a really interesting point you've made there. And actually, we might do a future episode on this exact point. Winky face. So give me the secret signal, whatever that might be. There it is. That's just a little bit creepy, isn't it? There's 10 people watching you do that. But anyway, you go forward. Fast forward. You've got Saddam Hussein, enemy. Osama bin Laden, because of 9/11 attacks, whatever. And then you roll it forward. You've even got like the Syrian stuff that's gone on now, right? And then you've got this idea, it leads us all the way to today with Putin. Putin in Russia, right? There's always an external threat. There is always an enemy. And we don't know that enemy. We're just told they're an enemy. I personally do not know whether Putin is a good leader, a bad leader, whether what he's done in Ukraine is, whether there's justified stuff. Really interestingly, you saw this week Nigel Farage saying it's the EU's fault, the war that's going on there. And I've been saying that for a long time. Immediately, Boris Johnson's coming on X and media and going, Nigel Farage is a disgrace, which is, Boris Johnson's got a very short memory. We know this, but he said the same thing back in 2014. In fact, exactly the same thing in an article in The Independent, in the Eye, where he said it's the war in Russia and Ukraine is the EU's fault. So exactly the same thing. Boris Johnson said that in 2014. It's a front page of the Eye newspaper. Have a look. You'll see it, right? But Farage just said the same thing, and everybody's saying, "Oh, he's a Putin apologist," all of this sort of stuff. But there's this idea that there has to be an external threat, and you know why? Do you know why I think that is, Paul? Because one of the best ways to govern, one of the best ways to control a population is through fear. Through fear. So you generate the fear through this external threat, right? And fair enough, right? You had with your man Gaddafi, and I say your man Gaddafi, you're a Gaddafi apologist forever.
Not my man.
Your pal.
I'm not buying his scarf.
Gaddafi.
I'm not sponsoring his political party.
But you had the Lockerbie bombings, right? The Lockerbie, the plane that came down just outside Lockerbie. Right?
You don't need to make the noise.
Yeah, that's bad. Actually, we're going to get a lot of stick for that. It's a long time ago, man. Whatever. That was obvious. It's not my fault. I didn't yell. No, I didn't do it. What are you blaming me for? I think it's bad. It's horrendous. How much clearer?
Fake news.
It wasn't fake news. It definitely happened.
Where were you?
Yeah. But the point being that there's always this enemy, and Gaddafi was an enemy at the time, right? We've always got these enemies. So I don't even know who those enemies are. And actually, are they the real enemy? Is Putin causing me a problem right now? Really?
Yeah.
Is he?
Energy prices have gone up.
Energy prices have gone up. Well, didn't energy prices go up before that, though?
They went up a lot, though.
Before the Ukraine stuff.
Here's direct invasion of Ukraine that's caused the Western world to have high bills.
Bullshit. It's absolute bullshit.
That's what the news is telling us.
Yes, absolute crap, man. It's absolute crap. So, the fossil fuel generated electricity is more expensive because of a gas pipeline from Russia. Makes no sense.
I'll give you a soundbite, one that we can use on the shorts, the YouTube shorts.
Go on.
What is a magician's best tool?
His assistant, like Debbie McGee.
100%. But in this case, no.
Yeah.
Misdirection. And that is exactly it.
Yeah.
They try and feed people the thing that the enemy. Look at this person. This person is the threat at the moment. And when people are threatened, they subdue themselves. They fall in line. They listen, because that's the way we're taught. We're taught that through school and everything. You listen when you're scared or when you need to get in a group to defend yourself. Their misdirection could be the enemies we've got. Now, I reckon Hitler was not really that sort of misdirection. It was a bad egg.
He was definitely a bad egg. Yeah.
Russia's far, far away from us. I think it's wrong what they're doing, but I don't know the history of their country enough to understand whether actually Ukraine should have been part of it in the first place.
Well, it was. It used to be, didn't it? The USSR. I think that's they're not. I don't think Putin actually wants Ukraine, from what I gather. I don't think he wants that. I think he wants to annex, the Crimea, which he believes that the population of Crimea, want to be Russian or whatever. I don't think he wants Ukraine at all. I just don't think he wants NATO tanks.
There's a lot of natural resource there.
Possibly, yeah, quite possibly. But the point, I think the real point, like I say, the underlying thing for me is this idea that there's this enemy. There's always got to be an enemy. And it leads us right to the point of back to 9/11. And whether or not, and this is a little bit of
that definitely happened.
It definitely happened, but this is a teaser for next week's episode, because we've got a special guest coming on next week, and we're going to talk all about conspiracy theories, right? Really cool. But when you think about 9/11, and whether you think about whether that was an inside job or not, conspiracy theory, we'll talk about that next week. Whether you believe it was or not is irrelevant. Mm-hmm. What is true, undoubtedly and demonstrably true, is that 9/11 gave the government of America and Britain the mandate to go to war in the Middle East. The people now supported it because we were under attack. And it's, the bombings in London here was very similar thing. It's personally affecting us. I feel under threat. Therefore, it's legitimate what you're doing. You could say the same thing about Pearl Harbor, mate.
They have bombed other places. So if you look at the where Ariana Grande was, the Manchester Arena bombing.
Yes.
You look at the it was a festival. There was a music group, wasn't there? There was some concert. I'm gonna have to look it up because it's ridiculous information.
What are you talking about?
It sounds like Bastille, something like that, where they had a massacre as well.
Oh, you're talking about Paris. It was like a nightclub, a dance hall in Paris. Yeah. That wasn't. Yeah, it was the. It does begin with B. It sounds like Bastille. You're right. I can't remember what it is, but that was not long after the Charlie Hebdo attacks.
There were. Yeah, look at. God, forgot about that one.
Yeah.
You say 9/11 was to get people involved. I think there have been other things which show that there are people.
To get people involved. What I'm saying is that when the threat becomes more real, then the mandate from the people becomes more real. Well, I think America. You think about Vietnam, and they still get criticised for the war in Vietnam now, right? As in, what were you doing? That was complete nonsense. As is all war, as a fact. But I think they didn't want to make that mistake again. So there's this idea that actually, when the threat becomes more real to the people, we're more willing to support the war. And let's not forget again, war is big business. It creates money and munitions and all that sort of stuff. It's big business. People make a lot of money out of war. They really do. People make a lot of money out of the bloodshed of innocent people.
Stade de France had bombings as well.
There you go. I mean, there's been a lot in the French. I remember the Stade de France.
Bataclan Theatre.
Bataclan, that's right, in the middle of Paris. I remember the Stade de France ones, actually. It was only 3 or 4 years ago, maybe just before lockdown. There's been quite a few in Paris, actually, which is a shame because I love Paris. Paris has got a special place in my heart. I love Paris.
For another episode.
Yeah, me and my wife enjoy going to Paris. That's all it is.
It's a city of love, apparently.
It's indeed.
But
I still think that actually you've got. It's not. You've still got this idea that actually when the threat becomes more real, this enemy, when it becomes more what's the word I'm looking for? Anthropomorphized, basically personified. When it becomes a real thing, more tangible. That's the word I'm looking for. When the threat becomes more tangible, I am more willing to give my support to the governments and the people who want to go to war and all that sort of stuff. 9/11 did the same thing. The London bombings did the same thing. I even think Pearl Harbor did the same thing. Right? I do. I think Pearl Harbor gave the American people. You
put a veil of insanity on, and then you come out with stuff like that, which I think is interesting.
I think Pearl Harbor gave the American people the will, and it gave the American government the mandate to go to war, Second World War, for a war that the Americans probably didn't support. They were like, it's in Europe. I don't care about that war. What's that got to do with me?
At a time where social media was definitely not around and people were in their own countries. They were just in their own worlds, really. They kind of got around a little bit. But
we probably need to talk more about, was 9/11 an inside job? Was Pearl Harbor an inside job? Was the London bombings an inside job? We'll talk more about that next week. Right?
Yeah, go on then. It's a tricky one, that.
False flag, the London bombings, if you remember. False flag exercise. Tricky stuff. So this conspiracy. But anyway, the point being that there always needs to be an enemy. Always needs to be an enemy. We don't know who that enemy is, but I think personally, Paul, that this enemy that is designed or presented to us within the Western media is there for control. Because the best way to control a population is through fear. I think if we're all happy and we're not scared of anything, we might actually revolt against what's happening, right? But you also get, the last thing I'd say on this, you also get internal enemies, internal threats. And you've
been watching the series 24, haven't you?
No. So I'm talking about threats to your political and social stability, right? And in my head, I still think that it is incredible that the media in around 2016 to 2019 were able to convince the entire UK population that the biggest threat to them was a little old bloke who likes to make jam in his shed and wants to give you free internet. For some reason...
I mean, to be honest, I'm not going to say the word, but it begins with a P. That does sound like a threat to children.
What, making jam in your shed?
An old man that makes jam in his shed and gives out free internet.
No, come on. That says more about your mind than it does about Jeremy Corbyn's. But I'm talking about Jeremy Corbyn, man. And I'm not saying anything about that.
He had no character though about him. He wasn't a leader.
That's irrelevant in the point. All of that is irrelevant in the point. But the actual point being is that the media is quite able to whip up this idea of an enemy, a threat. And we're the only ones that can protect you from this threat. Well, yeah, about 3 or 4 people, I think. The Rothschilds and those sorts of people, which is why X is so good, isn't it? When you've got community journalism going on.
Yeah.
But that's the point, man. This idea of a threat. What have we got at the moment as the threat? I got something come through my door yesterday. Brilliant. I'm loving some of the paraphernalia that gets lumped through my door at the moment on elections. Picture of Keir Starmer, and it said Keir Starmer needs you to vote reform. And I was really confused about this. And it was actually from the Tories. I'm like, blimey, they are doing really well. They're giving me 2 enemies, 2 for the price of 1 right now. They're giving me reform and Keir Starmer all at the same time. I'm getting double bubble for my money. Here, absolutely amazing. And it's just interesting, man. This idea of the construction of an enemy for control. So was Gaddafi a good guy or a bad guy, Paul?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to believe the X. I'm going to believe the fact he's backing terrorist organisations, which may just be, Jesus Christ, no doubt the UK have done it in the past. We backed someone. The Americans definitely have done it in the past. We backed a pie. They did it over in, I'm going to be wrong, in the Arab, it would have been for Osama bin Laden.
Oh, Al Qaeda. Well,
yeah.
the Americans
backed them.
Well, they armed Afghanistan in the war against Afghanistan and Russia, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So they interfered because they thought, we're going to back them. So Gaddafi's backing people, America backed people and took it away. Like, honestly, they're all kind of the same, but we just think America's the good guys.
Yeah, well, because they're delivering freedom right to your doorstep. Fuck yeah.
That's freedom bombs.
Yeah, freedom bombs coming at you. Just interesting stuff, man. Really is interesting stuff. The pin. Do the secrecy. There it is. Thanks. The pin that I remember, and this was, and we do need to wrap up pretty soon, right? And we've got a really good episode next week. But the pin I want to talk about, and I want to do an episode about this because this is a subject that's really close to my heart, and I know a lot about. I think, right?
Gardening.
I do know a bit about gardening. I did some nice gardening yesterday. I planted some hostas, a couple of dahlias, some pink kisses. Yeah, it was really nice. I did a bit of gardening yesterday. But anyway, so middle-aged white man, isn't it? Did some nice gardening. Got me sweaty doing it.
I made stuff grow. They've been doing it on Amazon for centuries, yet we're proud of it.
The pin, right, was from Tristan Tate. Do you know Tristan Tate?
Oh, yeah.
Andrew Tate's brother. Right. Say what you like about the Tate brothers. I don't want to say anything that's going to cause me slanderous or defamation of character or anything like that.
Seem like good guys, to be honest.
Top blokes, all round top blokes, I think. But I was reading some stuff that he put on the other day. For one thing that's really interesting, one tweet he made the other day, which was just like, you cannot do that. One of them was said, if you vote for reform and send me evidence, then somebody's going to win $5,000. That's election interference, election fraud. You can't do that. But anyway, you genuinely can't. You're getting a lot of trouble for doing that. The other thing was that he put on the other day, he was watching the Belgium, I don't know who Belgium were playing. He was watching the Belgium game in the Euros, Euro 24. And he said, these were his words, only ethnic natives should be allowed to play for their countries.
Really?
That's what he said. I was like, all right, I'm going to play with you here. And Andrew, not Andrew, it was Tristan.
Did you respond?
No, he didn't respond to me. But I said, okay, so where do we go with this then when it comes to Britain? What would you define as an ethnic native? How far do we go back? Is an ethnic native a Celt, a Brit, a Roman, a Viking, a Saxon, a Norman? You know, what is an ethnic native
Romania.
of England's?
Just so you know.
Was it in Belgium, Romania? There's the game. Right. So I just think, you idiot. You absolute idiot. And somebody said, by that rationale, then that nobody would ever be able to play for the US. And I did say, you know, the ethnic natives of America are the Native Americans, believe it or not. You know,
they did all right.
Yeah, no one else is a native. And he's no. You know, black and white people settled America at the same time. This is what he said. So they historically. No, he's replying to someone else. Historically.
Oh, bless.
Historically, yeah, I'm going to get to him one day.
Get ignored by a Tate.
Shocking. But he said native, naturally, historically, America is multicultural. Belgium isn't. Like, what are you talking about? So I'm going to do an episode, right, next week, coming up. The history, not next week, because conspiracy theories next week. We'll get it on the agenda, Paul. I want to do one around the history of Britain and what it means to be English. I really want to do one around that because we've got this whole jingoism from Farage and this whole Union flag waving bullshit that's going on at the moment. I'm going to do an episode where it answers the question, what is an Englishman? I want to answer that question.
You can wrap that up quite easily. I think it's the length of time you've been here. And how much your generations of your family that have lived here.
I'm giving nothing away.
Maybe learning English.
I'm giving nothing away.
I'm
giving nothing away on this. I'm giving nothing away. So let's have a little walk through time throughout the history of England and Britain. And let's try and answer the question, what is an ethnic native of England that will satisfy Tristan Tate?
That's where we've gone wrong, where these villages that respect their village elders, who are maybe the historians of the village, we're losing, or not losing, we don't listen to our historians enough. They need to be more vocal. Maybe you need them on the party to tell people that this is the generation, this is the history of England from the Vikings upwards. Stop being racist. Immigration is a normal thing. I think, we're an island, and so it's tricky for us. You can only put so many people on a flipping floating bit of rock. Whereas America, France, and everything, Russia, they've got vast sizes. They can take loads of people. We can't, so it's a tricky one for us. But Vikings immigrated to us. They did it in a quite violent way, but
human migration is as old as humans.
How far do you take it back? You've got the bridge between the Africas where people did migrate across that, the ice bridge. I think it was the ice bridge, whatever it was. No, the land bridge, wasn't it? And then that went. So they had that. So there was immigration. You can't go against immigration.
Exactly. We're going to do it. A couple of episodes' time. It's going to be a walk through time, through the history of England, history of Britain, and we'll answer the question, what is an ethnic native that will satisfy Tristan Tate? I'll even see if he wants to join in and watch it. I'll hound him for the next couple of weeks, just on this point, because that point really got my back up. I thought, what an ignorant thing to say. Ethnic native. It's stupid. So stupid.
From my side, well, two things. Unfortunately, that does sound a bit bad on his part. I think, come on, mate, you're meant to be an alpha male leader. You're meant to have quite a sensible attitude and outlook in life. And he's gone to Romania anyway. So although he's not making that point, he's emigrated somewhere else. And I know he's not trying to play football, but you shouldn't. I think you should never look at religion. You never look at ethnicity. People should be judged on how good and bad they are as a person. Don't care where you're from. Don't care the colour of your skin. Are you a good person in dark skin? Are you a bad person in pink skin? That should be how you judge. Everyone's got those personality traits, no matter what wrapper they've got on. They're good, they're bad, whatever. I would say, oh man, I forgot my point now. You crack on and say something brilliant.
Well, I think we need to wrap up in a minute.
Oh no, that was it. Just remembered it. Middle-aged brain. Middle-aged brain.
Middle-aged
audience members. I think what we're going to do as middle-aged white men who love gardening and have some sort of want to just learn everything about reality, write in the comments. Comment on the video. Share this with your friends. Write on X. Write on YouTube. Tell us what you want to talk about. Tell us a topic. And we will happily go away. No matter what it is, got to keep it viewer-friendly. Obviously can't be too horrific. But no matter what you want us to look at, we'll investigate and bring it up on the show. If you give us some nice quotes, a bit of a backstory, we can include those comments.
I'd quite like that, actually. I'd quite like people to tell us some stuff, what they want us to talk about. I'd like to go away and research something that I don't know about. It would be quite good, I think. Yeah. But next week,
like the moon landings were actually Russia. They're the ones that were backing it. You could be stuff like the beginning of time. How did the world get created? Is the universe just a marble in a bunch of marbles? Whatever it is, don't care.
That's big topics. Next week, we've got a conspiracy episode, conspiracy special. Might even be a little bit longer. Well, mind you, this one's 40 minutes now. We've got a big one next week because we've got a special guest coming over from America. Not coming over. Not flying.
I would say she's connected in.
Via Elon Musk satellites. So we've got somebody from America connecting in, and we're going to have a pretty... You like conspiracy theories, right?
100%. So sometimes they're true.
No, well, there you go. Next week, I think she's going to try and bring her wackiest, craziest conspiracy theories. I hope we get to talk about the Mandela effect, things like that, because that just blows my mind. Paul, go away. Think about top 3 conspiracies that you want to talk about next week.
Easy.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that. And then after that, I think we should talk about... Well, we'll be getting quite close to the election at that point, so we're going to need to do an election special at some point. But also, I want to talk about the history of Britain and what is a native English person, what is an ethnic native of England, just to answer Tristan.
The insanity of posh people that could be connected to the political one.
Yeah, I like that. I do like that. Right, guys, we better wrap up, man, because people need to get back to work. There are 11 people. God bless you, 11 people watching right now. Thank you so much, all 11 of you watching. We love you to bits. Thank you so much.
It's the reason we keep doing it.
It is actually, yeah, completely right. Cool beans. What you can do this afternoon and what you have for dinner, Paul?
I'm going to relax. I'm going to eat a lot of pork.
Right, nice, cool. I had a big barbecue at the weekend, so I've got barbecue food for days. I'm going to eat some of that. Yeah, and there's some more gardening. That's what I'm going to do. Right.
Living the dream. This is what I wanted to do when I was a kid.
So I roll. Right, guys, much love. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we will see you next week.
Thanks a lot. See you later. Bye.